Hi to everybody in the room and also on Zoom. My name's Dr. Ben Bowers. I'm a Wellcome Postdoctoral Fellow and a College Postdoctoral Associate with Jesus. And it's my great pleasure to be co-chairing the series of Deaf and Dying events with Eleanor, who will introduce herself in a moment, Deputy Director of the Intellectual Forum. A brief overview of what we are trying to do with the Deaf and Dying series, and this is the second of 6 of our events, so do keep an eye out for our other events, and we'll do a flag at the end on them as well. But really, I was given a blank canvas about a year ago by Eleanor and Julian, who said, would you like to do something on deaf and dying? And I went, yes, please. I'm a clinical academic and I research end-of-life care and practice as a nurse consultant. And we don't talk about deaf and dying as much as we really should. We do have debates in the public about things like assisted dying, but we still avoid talking about the nuances of deaf and dying. And this is what this series is bringing together, to really think about exploring our shared human experience, opening up public conversations, and also using some of the excellent interdisciplinary research that we have. And some of the issues we're discussing are reoccurring, and some of them are very topical, well, all of them topical, but some are new problems. And today we're going to be talking about a very new issue, and one which is pressing for us, and thinking about how we live with digital legacies and how we use them. So without further ado, over to Eleanor.
Thanks, Ben, and I'm not going to introduce myself because I'm going to just have the pleasure of introducing your wonderful lecturer for this evening. I think we're very privileged because I think we're about to listen to a rising academic star who's just on the cusp of greatness. Dr. Katarzyna Nowacik-Bazinska got her PhD at the Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznań in Poland, and she now is a research associate at the Leverhulme Centre for the Future of Intelligence here at the University of Cambridge. She was just this year recognized by Schmidt Sciences as one of the 19 exceptional global researchers breaking new ground in AI. So I feel we just caught her at the right time. It's been a pleasure working with Katarzyna over the last year or more, or year pretty much, preparing this lecture and sharing her research. So without further ado, I think you're in for a real treat. Enjoy.
Thank you so much, Eleanor, for this generous introduction. Good evening, everyone. It's so special to be here with you today. It's truly honored. I would like to thank Julian Huppert for the invitation, Eleanor O'Gorman for her trust and unwavering support leading up to tonight's lecture, Ben Bowers, Molly, for her incredible work in organizing this important series of talks and meetings on deaf and dying. And also I would like to thank all of you. I truly appreciate you taking the time to join us today, both in person and online. And today I would like to talk about digital immortality. And let me start with this rather unusual question. What do you think you can buy for $10? $10. This is roughly the price of 3 cups of cappuccino, a couple of bus tickets, or a very cheap book. And this is exactly the price that you need to pay for digital immortality today. And when I say digital immortality, I mean that for $10, you can create a virtual representation of yourself that holds your biography, mimics your language patterns, and reflects your personality traits. With just $10, you can choose one of the websites, like Project December, upload your photos, videos, audio messages, and be digitally resurrected in no time as a text-based, voice-based, or image-based chatbot. It is as simple as that. In the long history of the pursuit of immortality, it seems that we've entered a new phase. For ages, immortality was considered unique and priceless. And now we live in a culture where our digital immortality is almost as inevitable as death, and the $10 immortality is a sign of our times. And now you may wonder how we got to the point of immortality being sold for $10. Let me briefly tell you this story, and we will call this informally the $10 narrative. Digital immortality may sound like a very new concept, but the earliest experiments in this realm date back to the late 90s. And it was during this time when two researchers from Microsoft, Gordon Bell and Jim Gamble, launched a pioneering project called My Life Bits, in which they explored the idea of collecting life, using tools that were very primitive compared to today's technology. Bell recorded every possible aspect of his life, including phone calls he made, books he read, pages he browsed, believing that all of this can be transformed into a compelling representation of himself. A completely new understanding of immortality began to take shape. In those early stages, a clear connection was established between a vast collection of data and the idea of immortality. The equation seemed simple. The more data you can gather, the more sensors to track it, the better the system to manage that data, the more accurate and realistic the representation of the person could become. And the enthusiasm of the early pioneers of digital immortality was evident. Society at large, Bell and Gamble wrote in their book Total Recall, is on an inexorable path toward total recall technology, and it's going to transform the world around you. The power of this transformation will be awesome. And we may not fully share this enthusiasm today, but it's fair to say that Bell and Gamble's prediction regarding the development of digital immortality technologies was to some extent remarkably accurate. It's absolutely clear they added in a different place that by 2020, the immortalization technology will have matured to offer a complete total recall experience. And that's the experience we are very close to in 2024. Over the past 3 decades, we have witnessed a gradual transformation of digital immortality from a niche experiment to a mainstream technology. And even in my relatively short academic career, I've experienced this significant shift. When I started my PhD in 2015, I really struggled to convince my doctoral committee in Poland to accept the topic of immortality, of digital immortality. At the time, it simply didn't seem academic enough, serious enough. They asked me, what exactly will you be reading? What's your methodology? What field of research are you working in? And my supervisor, who believed in me a lot, suggested, all right then, so maybe let's propose a different topic for the exam, and once you are accepted, we can start working on your ideas. So that's what I did. I graduated in theater studies and media studies, and during my exam, I presented a beautifully tailored topic on the theme of immortality in the work of one of my favorite theater directors, Romeo Castellucci. The committee was delighted. They accepted me as a top candidate, and I was delighted too. And the day after, I tossed that topic aside and go back to working on digital immortality, which, let's add, wasn't completely against the rule, just highly uncommon. But I don't want to sound cocky here, because the truth is that along the way, I had thousands of doubts and faced many ups and downs in my academic career, and experienced several painful rejections and wanted to give up countless times for multiple reasons. However, there was one thing I held on to relentlessly, and that was the topic. And it's not that I've ever been such a huge fan of digital immortality, but I strongly believe, now more than ever, that the societal, political, cultural, even environmental consequences of introducing these technologies on a large scale will be immense. And after a few years, by the time I defended my dissertation, the topic had evolved so much that the new field of research, digital death or digital immortality, this is how we call it today, had begun to take shape. Conferences around the world started focusing on post-mortem recreation, and researchers from a wide range of disciplines, including sociology, cultural studies, legal studies, began publishing books and papers on the topic. Over the time, initiatives related to digital immortalization grew so significantly that two researchers from Oxford University, Luciano Floridi and Carl Uman, coined the term digital afterlife industry, signaling the emergence of a new market segment dedicated entirely to immortalization practices. And when I first arrived here in Cambridge in 2023, it became clear that we are at the peak of interest in these technologies. And it also quickly became evident that while digital immortality had mostly been the realm of startup ventures, it also had started to attract the attention of big tech. And for example, in 2022, Amazon introduced a feature allowing Alexa to mimic the voice of a deceased person. And in 2021, Microsoft patented software to digitally recreate individuals, including those who had passed away. Additionally, in the past few months, global media interest in this topic has surged so significantly that digital immortality now occupies airtime in news segments, podcasts, documentaries, talk shows, not to mention the entire pop culture industry. Being in the midst of this peak, let's now take a closer look at the digital immortality narrative. So the one that I called this way, $10 narrative. What is this narrative about? What promises are embedded in it? How it's constructed, and by whom? Before we closely analyze the main elements of this narrative, let me show you the trailer for the new documentary film Eternal You, directed by Hans Block and Moritz Riesvik.
If you have the chance to talk to someone that died, that you love, would you take it?
Artificial intelligence promises us what religion does. You don't have to die. You can be reborn someplace else in a different form.
The first conversation I had with the Jessica simulation, it said things that were almost uncannily like her.
We are on the verge of a new era.
Hi? It's like it's the funniest thing. It's like, what's the first thing you say to someone that's dead? Like, welcome back?
Everybody is chasing that next big breakthrough.
Capitalism is trying to say, well, we're not only making a new market, we're making new humans.
And then he says, I'll haunt you. And I just push the computer back.
And it's not my job as the creator of technology to prevent the technology from being released because I'm afraid of what somebody might do with it.
An open source large language model recently seems to have played a role in a person's decision to take their own life.
It's a kind of experiment on ourselves about the most intimate, important matters.
I feel that sometimes we could go too far with technology.
There were things that scared me, and a lot of stuff I didn't want to hear. I wasn't prepared to hear.
All right, so in relation to what we've just seen, let's go back to the question, what is the $10 narrative about? So first, it's about almost omnipotent technology, which forms the core of this narrative. AI is seen today as a remedy for all our problems, from climate change to healthcare and microeconomics. Unsurprisingly then, as Stephen Cave notes, AI viewed as a meta solution is also being used to address the meta problem, death. Second, the $10 narrative tries to convince us that interacting with an avatar of a deceased person will ease grief, will bring comfort, and make the chaotic and painful experience of mourning more bearable, more manageable. The $10 narrative also directly addresses the fear that we all to some extent share, the fear of stopped conversation, and offers actually tools to reverse this situation. Through these technologies, as you can see on the slide, you can say things that were left unsaid, take part in meetings that never happened, express your love, even forgiveness, and find the solace you were looking for. The $10 narrative also often highlights, rather proudly and without hesitation, that the generated digital entity will be you or your loved one. As stated in the name of the company, it's you, only virtual, and the connection can still feel very authentic. And finally, the $10 narrative also suggests that you can build an endless chain of experience exchange, like a new culture of remembrance, where your grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and even humanity at large can benefit from knowing you and your life history. And additionally, if you are looking for a gift for a Mother's Day or Father's Day, you can buy this very special gift of being remembered offered by the Hereafter company. And over the years, whenever I've shared this narrative with different audiences, I often get puzzled looks, just like some of you have right now. People usually react with this mix of surprise, concern, confusion, when they hear how simple, how optimistic this narrative is. And if that's what you are thinking, I completely agree with you. So now let's take a moment to gradually deconstruct the $10 narrative and verify all of these frequently repeated claims and promises. So first, with the development of generative AI, many companies indeed have access to very powerful tools. However, we should remember that many of these companies within the digital afterlife industry are run like garage startups, following a trial and error approach. So digital immortalization is not backed up by in-depth research or a series of tests before these technologies are introduced to the market. It's more like, let's see whether it will work out. And obviously, given how delicate and sensitive the topic of death is, this approach is very, very alarming. And if we match the experimentation with technology with the fact that we currently don't have research-based evidence to help us understand the influence of post-mortem avatars on the grieving process, it starts to sound even more concerning. At the moment, we cannot prove that these technologies will be helpful in the short or long run, but we can't even definitely claim that they won't be harmful. And the fact that this technology might prove beneficial for its creators or just a handful of people does not lend credibility to promoting it as a universal remedy that will bring comfort to everyone in the same way. The $10 narrative, as we saw, promotes intergenerational communication. And the idea is very noble. But when we consider the ephemerality of these platforms, the claim seems over-promising again. Tamara Neese calls this platform temporality and notes that the venture capital is not aligned with the idea of forever, which is ironic, right, given the products they sell. So, forever, or as long as the company is on the market, you can never be sure. What is also worth noting is that when companies paint a picture of uninterrupted conversation, we should remember that this arrangement only works as long as you continue paying the subscription. And this is precisely why I keep referring to this narrative with the symbolic $10, to help us constantly keep in mind that the digital afterlife industry is primarily focused on monetizing our relationship with the deceased and capitalizing on a very fundamental human fear. And finally, the $10 narrative conveys the message that once you die, you can still be with your family and friends. But it's not true. Once you die, you are gone. And the $10 narrative barely acknowledges that a post-mortem avatar is merely a representation or just an image of a deceased person. So when we zoom out from the $10 narrative, as we've just done, and go beyond the market claims and promises, we start to see scratches, cracks, and paradoxes on its surface. But there is also something beneath the surface, something secretly hidden and barely visible. Let me go back once again to the time of my PhD. It was the beginning of the third year. After a year-long break for my maternity leave, I returned to the university very excited to be working again on this topic. During my leave, whenever possible, though not that often, I read and collected materials on digital immortalization. And at that time, I was absolutely hooked by this idea. And I found it both creepy and fascinating, and I had lots of ideas to discuss with my supervisor. And then I heard the news that my supervisor, Professor Eva Guderian-Czaplinska, had been diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. From the very beginning, it was clear that the situation was very, very serious. While focusing on her treatment, Professor Czaplinska decided that she wanted to work for as long as she physically could, continuing with all her academic commitments, including supporting my work on death, dying, and immortality. And I remember once sitting in front of her, clutching some of my chapters in hand, unable to say a word. In neutral context, things like digital immortality or superpower technology can be easily criticized and intellectually processed. But in that situation, they sounded so odd, so false, so emotionally draining. And to be honest with you, I had never in my life felt so inappropriate about the things I was about to say. In front of me sat a very brave and strong woman, losing her hair, losing her weight, who as a former marathon runner now struggled to reach the first floor. But she was strong enough to work, to joke a lot, and write a book to support other women she met in the oncology units. She was a professor of ancient theater, and the title of her book was Trojan Women, 10 Private Tips for Beginners in Triple-Negative Breast Cancer Chemotherapy. After a year, she died, and I quickly realized that what started for me as a normal academic project had become something very personal. And there were times when I felt that I couldn't bear the weight of it all. But little by little, I kept working, rewriting, and mostly deleting pages, pushing through major corrections over and over again. And with the help of my next supervisor, Professor Agnieszka Jelewska, I finished my PhD, ultimately submitting the 20-second version of it. What I struggled with the most for a long time was this kind of cognitive and emotional dissonance. On the level of experience, relationships, emotions, everything was telling me about loss, about saying goodbye, about coming to terms with death. Yet, on the level of my dissertation, writing, reading, and all this $10 narrative, it felt as if everything was focused on preserving and staying alive, as if death didn't have to be a big deal because the remedy was just a click away. And I'm sharing this story with you today because that was the first time that I realized that the $10 narrative is not just about profit and creating the illusion of solving the problem of death, but it's also about the disconnection. And this is a huge irony, isn't it? Given that the main promise of the digital afterlife industry is to enable connecting with the dead, beneath the surface of the $10 narrative, secretly hidden and barely visible, operates a complex machine of disconnection. What does this machine actually disconnect? The list is long. It disconnects life from death, loss from pain, farewell from separation, change from uncertainty, and emptiness from silence. The digital afterlife industry creates a narrative where death doesn't have to signify the end of anything, where loss doesn't have to bring pain, where saying goodbye is not finite, but casual, more like see you later until the app with the deceased is turned on again. In this narrative, change is merely understood as a status update of the person from flesh to bits, and silence can quickly be filled with AI-generated sentences. But let's be fair here. It's not solely a problem within the digital afterlife industry, because if we take a closer look at this, we will notice that the process of disconnection within the $10 narrative represents a much broader and troubling trend that psychologists have been warning about for years. So in Western European culture, as we read, we have disconnected from our bodies, which define who we are. We have disconnected from emotions, especially the difficult and painful ones, though they help us accurately orient ourselves in surroundings and give our actions meaning and direction. We have disconnected from community, even though our lives are always realized within a group. We have disconnected from the places we come from and the nature we know, even though it is these specific places, people, and even animals, plants, and microorganisms that create the complex network of connections that shapes us. And finally, we have disconnected from culture, although it provides us with patterns and norms of behavior essential for navigating social reality. And after this discovery, I begin to wonder if the $10 narrative is driven by profit and under the guise of connecting with the dead actually deepens our disconnection from the most profound and complex human experiences, what would a true narrative of connection look like? Is it possible to employ AI in the digital afterlife industry in a way that doesn't fuel the machine of disconnection? One which won't isolate us in the experience of death and loss, one that will encourage us to seek new rituals and practices that help us build bonds, one that won't produce this hallucination of being without actual being. Where should we start? With what values, with what visions, with what ideas? And I feel that we are at the edge of new beginning here. And we can either stay where we are and keep complaining about the digital afterlife industry in general and the $10 narrative in particular, or we can try to find different ways to approach it, different narratives. And the narrative I've chosen to contribute to and support in my work is the one of empathy, care, and responsibility. And I believe that these three values could serve as a new guidepost for the digital afterlife industry, helping us better calibrate our desires, hopes, and dreams. And now let me briefly explain what empathy, responsibility, and care might mean in practical terms. Empathy. Empathy simply starts when you see those around you, when you recognize their different needs and accept very different responses to the same problem. However, what has always struck me is how the $10 narrative is almost unquestioningly marketed as a great equalizer. This narrative, focused on profit and disconnection, is tied to a singular vision of the world, one deeply rooted in Anglophone culture and driven by US-based tech companies. So if the most widespread Anglophone response to the dilemma of our immortality is, well, we could all resurrect ourselves in the form of post-mortem avatars, my question is, who are we? Do you and I truly want to become a post-mortem avatars one day? Do you and I desire our loved ones to become deadbots? Do you and I want commercial companies to take the lead on such intimate and personal experience as death and grief? Does this align with your and my cultural traditions? And do you and I even fit into this presumed universal abstract we? And over the years, these questions began swirling in my head and eventually evolved into a research project, which was funded last year by Schmidt Sciences through the AI 2050 Fellowship. The project is titled Imaginaries of Immortality in the Age of AI and Intercultural Analysis. And to explore these questions, I've selected 3 Eastern countries for this research. Since this is pioneering research, there aren't any benchmarks to follow. So the geographical scope of this research was based on the criterion of contrast. I believe it's important to initiate such intercultural research in countries whose socio-political conditions and cultural backgrounds differ from the West. So the first set of countries selected for this research is Poland next month, then India in February 2025, and China April 2025. In each of these 3 locations, I'm planning to conduct a series of workshops with local experts, including academics, artists, palliative care professionals, funeral service professionals, entrepreneurs, people who work at the intersection of death, immortality, and technology. And together with Dr. Stephen Cave, Dr. Tomasz Holanek, and Saida Mobayed Vega, and local experts and specialists, we will explore what it means to create meaningful relationships for AI in our end-of-life situation. There is no single expert on digital immortality. Therefore, from oncological units and artistic studios to funeral services and local practices, we will gather diverse narratives immersed in various beliefs, moralities, metaphysics, and intellectual traditions, believing that this is where the true expertise arises. And to complement the expert perspectives, I will also gather insights from non-experts during focus groups. These focus groups will draw inspiration from Michael Hebb's well-established concept, death over dinner, where people come together in a relaxed and inclusive setting to discuss the often taboo topic of death. And the concept of immortality over dinner, this is how I called these focus groups, extend this notion. And over the next few months, we will host dinners with approximately 80 people who I hope will be eager to share their preferences, hopes, fears regarding digital immortality. The master of ceremonies for each dinner will be Ania Franczak, the founder of the Institute of the Good Death in Poland, and grief doula. And through these dinners, in addition to gauging opinions and collecting data, we will also promote the idea that conversations about death, including digital death, are important on practical level to simply organize your affairs before death, but also on emotional and cognitive level, as these discussions can be hugely transformative life experiences. Responsibility. Witnessing the growing scale of the digital immortality phenomenon, I also realized that there is a significant area of responsibility that has not yet been fully addressed within the digital afterlife industry. And I started to work on this with my colleague from the CFI, Dr. Tomasz Holanek, and that work helped me better understand the scope of responsibility within the digital afterlife industry. In 2024, we published a paper in Philosophy and Technology on deadbots, suggesting a list of recommendations for what responsible design might mean in the digital afterlife industry. And among them are, for example, age-limited access to deadbots to protect children from the potentially negative consequences of using these technologies during their grieving process, or the principle of meaningful transparency to ensure that users of these technologies know that they are interacting with a machine. Or the principle of mutual consent, which emphasizes that digital immortality is not only about the person creating a post-mortem avatar, but also about the intended users, so the family and friends of the deceased, who may not be ready to engage with such products. And we think that their rights and needs should be also respected. And to our sheer surprise, the paper gained global coverage and was discussed worldwide, which obviously brought us great satisfaction and joy, but more importantly, it opened up space in mainstream discussion on this problem. And our goal has always been to raise this cautionary flag and say that the design of deadbots cannot be an area of arbitrary decisions made by AI providers, and we should think about new ethical and design standards that can be implemented here. However, the responsibility goes far beyond those related to the design of simulation of the deceased. I believe that for the design community, there is a much bigger challenge, which is how to design products and practices that do not isolate people in their experience of grief. Because as I mentioned, one-on-one conversations with an avatar of your deceased loved ones seem like a clear path to deepening loneliness, where the disconnecting machine has the perfect conditions to operate. But there is also a third layer of responsibility in the area of digital afterlife industry that pertains to philosophical questions. One of these questions is, where should our obligation toward the dead be situated in the digital realm? One of the oft-repeated arguments used by recreation service providers is that through these technologies we can maintain intergenerational communication. We've heard that before, right? And again, it sounds good, and we accept it almost without any hesitation. But when we give it a second thought, it becomes more problematic again. As the Polish Nobel Prize winner in literature, Olga Tokarczuk, points out, there has probably never been such a significant gap between generations in history. Today, the gap between grandchildren and grandparents is greater than that between residents of New York and Sandomierz. Sandomierz is a very small town in Poland. And the distance between great-grandchildren and great-grandparents, here we would probably need to use interplanetary distances for comparison. If Tokarczuk is right, is simply recreating the relationship between grandchildren and their ancestors the remedy for the problem? And if we can talk to each other while we are alive, will we be eager to do so once one side is dead. But there is also a flip side to this coin. In a world crowded and inhabited by our simulated dead on a large scale, will we have time and space to communicate with the living, and who should be prioritized? So maybe, along with immortalization strategies, our responsibility should be to start developing ethical strategies for forgetting, as well as the ethical frameworks on which this could happen. This might also be important for another reason: the environmental costs of maintaining the dead on a large scale. Digital resurrection is not a purely metaphysical act. On the contrary, it requires hardware and software, which in turn require water, energy, land, etc. So maybe, just maybe, we live in a moment when our responsibility is to focus more on our obligation toward future generations, rather than on the generations that have passed. And please don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating for any nihilistic gestures here, nor am I suggesting that we should erase everything. Personally, I spent nearly a year gathering stories and writing a book about my dying grandparents' lives because I felt that it was the right thing to do. But what I'm trying to emphasize is that we need to have a serious discussion about the foundations and frameworks guiding how we choose to remember and forget in the age of AI. And finally, care. As we will be forming these new practices, we definitely need support. And I believe that the care for the dead in the digital world shouldn't be orchestrated solely on an individual level, but also more systematically, perhaps at an institutional level. Why? Because if you were to ask me right now, all right, so what should I do to prepare for death in the digital world? After working in this field for almost a decade, I would struggle to give you a clear answer. And this is because this area is so complex, is so chaotic, and shaped by the unpredictable decisions of AI recreation service providers that it's really hard to grasp or follow. And recognizing this gap, I've started advocating for the professionalization of the digital afterlife industry, which I see as an emerging social innovation. We often talk about technological innovation within the digital afterlife industry, but what we are missing here, I think, is social innovation. This social innovation, where driven by immortality-related technologies, will be social both in purpose and its delivery through people and for people. And when I think about professionalization as a social innovation, I envision a new cohort of specialists whom I collectively refer to as digital afterlife leaders, or by other names creatively suggested by my colleagues in the field, such as caregivers or practitioners or advisors, consultants. And if those terms sound a bit odd today, it's quite likely that in a few years, experts in this field might be in high demand. And it's because research indicates that the 10 most desirable jobs in 2020 didn't even exist in 2004. And this illustrates the rapid, dynamic, and unexpected changes we are undergoing due to development of digital technologies and AI. And the role of digital afterlife leaders will be to support diverse needs of individuals in end-of-life situations. These leaders could guide us on available technologies. They could provide psychological support during crisis and offer legal assistance. However, I envision their role to be bigger than simply consultancy. These new professionals should be action leaders, serving as a catalyst for transformation within the digital afterlife industry. They should be deep collaborators, engaging the public, private, and non-profit sectors as well as civil society. They should be systematic thinkers, capable of proposing solutions and enacting changes at various levels. And finally, they should be empathetic innovators who prioritize social values such as equality, diversity, well-being for both the living and the dead, and sustainable development. And obviously, this is a long-term process that demands engagement and collaboration among many specialists and sectors. And it will also require meeting certain thresholds, usually suggested by psychologists as stages of professionalization, such as the establishment of a profession based on full-time employment, the creation of training institutions, the formation of local institutions, the establishment of legal protection, and the development of a code of ethics. It's a lot. But I believe this is a worthwhile effort, and academia may play a significant role in fostering the social innovation within the digital afterlife industry. All right then, so after all of this, let's now try to safely land together. There is one particularly vivid image from my supervisor's book, Trojan Women, that will stay with me for a long time. In the final chapter, Professor Czaplinska writes, "I would like all trees to grow as long as possible in peaceful tranquility. I protest against anyone making coffins out of them, and it's certainly not for me. What I would like most is for my future and inevitable remains to be cremated with the smallest possible carbon footprint and then scattered in the forest or placed in a small hall-deck under a tree. I would also like you to come to the conclusion," and she addresses the women suffering from breast cancer, "that such reflections about the end are not really reflections about the end at all. One can continue living somewhere in the soil or in the water. Isn't it nice to think of oneself as a part of something, part of the world, not just in the human sense? To think that you will give rise to or at least support some young tree, that's a wonderful new beginning." So maybe it is in this perception of the world, in change, which, as the ancient philosophers teach us, is the only certain thing in the world, that we may find new forms for our post-mortem presence in the digital realm. Maybe it is in the fragment, the particle, the crumb, rather than in wholeness, an ideal representation that care, responsibility, and empathy may converge, extending to the living and the dead, the human and non-human, the present and the future. In one of my endless conversations with Dr. Tomasz Holanek, he suggested the idea of using AI to radically transform us into music. And I think it's a beautiful idea. What kind of music could each of us become after death? How would these pieces of music relate to one another? Or maybe we could go even farther and experiment with smells, colors, or other abstract forms. Maybe after all, digital immortality doesn't have to mean the compulsive gathering of endless data, and the path set by Gordon Bell and Jim Gemmell in the late 90s should be reconsidered. Maybe the Latin phrase pars pro toto, a part for the whole, could serve as a new model for immortality in the age of AI. And instead of striving for total recall, we might want to advocate for total empathy, total care, total responsibility. And this is a long way from the $10 narrative we've started with. But I believe that the digital afterlife industry is not set in stone. And there are many more possibilities out there to explore. And the very last sentence. No matter, however, what paths we choose, one thing is certain. Only in a world with diverse models and forms of immortality, we will be able to practice solidarity in the face of death. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Katarzyna. You gave us plenty to think on there. We're open to questions from the audience. Ben, did you want to get us started?
Yeah, and could I just say to people at the side, if you do want to come and join us, please do. So my first question, and people who are joined us on Zoom as well, please do put your questions in the chat and we'll come to you. That was brilliant. It took me way beyond my vague understanding and concerns about the risks, and actually it's a different narrative and I really like it. Do you mind if I pick up on the professionalism question? And if we were to do professionalization of a digital deaf field, and we've got such diverse vested interests and specialists, do you think it's possible?
I hope so. I hope so, and I think we really need people who have experience in digital world and digital technologies. And when I talk with people from, for example, palliative care professionals, and when I present these ideas, they are very much into it. They want to learn more, and it looks like they really need support from other people who are proficient in digital technologies and understand this market and understand all the risks associated with using these technologies. So that's why I think there is a room for this new cadre or professionals. And it's not sufficient, like professionals we already have. I feel it's not sufficient. And this new role might be very beneficial.
We'll take a question in the room and then we'll come back to Zoom. Sally, I think you had your hand. It's here, sorry, with the green sweater.
Thank you so much. I guess in what you've described, I'm wondering if there is a classification disconnection in terms of, let's say I die. My mortality has come to pass. In what you're describing, my relatives, my friends might experience an avatar of me. They might see it, they might hear it, but I have no agency. I'm no longer acting in the world, and I don't control anything about what that representation of me does. So there hasn't been an afterlife, there isn't immortality, and yet if people are experiencing and remembering and thinking about a representation of me, is that not memorialization?
Mm-hmm. Or there's also another distinction that was proposed by Professor Patrick Stokes, whether it's more about remembering or replacing the dead. Because as you said, what we're creating is a representation of the person. It's just an image, it's a vision of that person, it's not that person. So we are dealing with completely new entity that is based on someone's biography and all this stuff that was left behind. But I absolutely agree with you that in this field or in this situation, there are many more stakeholders to think of. And it's not only the source of data, so the person who decides to create his or her post-mortem avatar, but it's also about the intended users. So people, the family, the friends who will be dealing with this. And yeah, so Yeah, that's a very tricky question. How to think about responsibilities, but also how to name this phenomenon, whether it's immortalization, it's afterlife, it's only about memorialization. So these are open questions, I think.
The person there in the brown sweater, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your talk. It was absolutely beautiful and poetic, and I really enjoyed it. This might be a niche question because it relates to my PhD, and I'm just like a short summary. I'm doing my PhD at the intersection of AI and gender studies. So I focus on how AI perpetuates colonial and cisnormative legacies towards trans people and how trans lives and deaths are conceptualized in the digital. So I was just thinking, when we talk about immortality, that also relates to the question about who is actually codable as a life to begin with. And I was just thinking, like, when we have people such as trans people not fitting into the binary codes, how do we conceptualize digital afterlives and immortality when these are not even there to begin with? So I was just curious to hear how you would conceptualize or think about the lives of those that are already considered uncodable lives to begin with, and already dead to the digital systems when we think about immortality, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. Absolutely, I agree, and that's a huge problem within this. So cross-cultural approach is one way to draw attention to the fact that there are certain groups that are invisible to the system of immortalization. And the trans or very different groups of people you mentioned, they are also out of the radar of these companies, and that should change. This is what I can say. I have no idea how to change that, but definitely there are certain groups marginalized, invisible, and yeah.
Ben, you've got a question on Zoom, and then I'll come back to the room.
Brilliant. Thank you. I'm going to do one comment and then one question. So from Anne Leaney, thank you for a wonderful lecture. Not a question, but a comment. I think it ironic that science has killed off religion, and it's a concept of life after death, and is now recreating it. But thank you again for a fascinating talk. And there's a linked question from Norichika. Forgive me if I've said your name incorrectly. How do you think the digital afterlife industry relates to religion and spirituality?
Yeah, that's a very important question, and I don't have a clear answer yet. So I know that there are some people within the industry who like to think about these new technologies or AI as a form of God. And if we choose to think about this, so we are very close to the religion in that sense. Personally, I wouldn't go that far. For me, it's only technology, and it's just a tool that we use in this particular context, in this particular situation. But yeah, some people who have already used these technologies, even the person we saw in this short material, like confessed this type of religious experience. So it's not out of question, like, that these technologies may be used also to help us practice some religious, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, the gentleman there, if you would, it's okay. Yeah.
Thank you for the fascinating lecture. I'm another PhD here, so I'd read your paper with Dr. Holonek. So really nice follow-up to a lot of the thoughts that came out of that. So on the point of like interdisciplinarity, you spoke about like total empathy, total responsibility, total care. Have like other colleagues here, such as those in like AI ethics of social AI or health AI, have they also been receptive to, you know, what you've taken out of like the digital afterlife industry and apply it to the like digital life AI? You know, have they been receptive, and do they like this idea? Thank you.
So the thing is that for AI ethics, the digital afterlife, this topic is very new. So I am a newcomer to this field, and it's great to have these conversations. But being honest, I haven't had a chance to discuss total care, total responsibility, and total empathy yet, because that's the first time I've ever presented this. So I think there are many discussions to come, and I'm very, very glad to have them and discuss how far we can go with this total care, responsibility, and empathy.
We'll raise our eyes to the heavens. Georgia, there's a couple of questions up the back, I think.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your talk. So I'm really interested in knowing that, so the cultural understanding of death and afterlife varies by place, location, and even religion. So I want to ask that through your fieldwork across countries, India, Poland, did you have any insights on how societies respond differently to this idea of these projects claiming to immortalize the dead? I ask this especially because in some Hindu traditions in India, the ultimate thing is for the individual to find ultimate liberation and freedom from the cycle of life and death, and which often means that for those who are left behind, for them to let go of those who have passed away. So in that context, I'm thinking that it's possible that some societies might not be receptible to this idea of immortalizing the dead. So any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, and that's why the whole AI 2050 project and this, when we were trying to explore different concepts, ideas, approaches, and also I won't be surprised if I hear that the response will be, no, we don't want this, we don't need it. So I'm very, very curious to start this research. As I said, in 2 weeks, we will have a series of research activities in Poland, then in India in February, and China April 2025. And I really hope to get back to answer to you at that point.
You had another question up there, John.
Hi. Thank you again. Great talk, of course. A question. So I'm interested in your proposal for professionalization of this industry and codes of ethics. That's kind of where I come from generally. And it's kind of the flip side of what you were saying about your $10 narrative, because clearly there are companies you feel that are out there doing things in a sort of Wild West sort of way, which kind of argues for some sort of regulation, I think is what you're saying. I'm just curious to know, do you think that, where would you start with your code of ethics? Where should the balance be between, say, responsibilities to the soon-to-be dead, shall we say, who want to immortalize themselves, if that's the right term, versus, can I call them the bereaved, the people that are left behind that want to interact with this? Because there's surely going to be different responsibilities in each of those different narratives.
Yeah, absolutely. Where to start? I think start with conversation and to invite to the table as many people who work at the intersection of death, immortality, and technology, just to be good, equipped to formulate these final answers. And I also assume that total care and total responsibility and total empathy might mean very different things in Poland, in India, and in China. And that's why this pioneering research, and that's why I don't want to imply any vision or views right now, but I think that there won't be one definition of total care, empathy, and responsibility. I hope so. I really do.
I'll just take one from Zoom, and then I'll come back to the room.
An excellent question here from Joanna Wallasey. So thank you for his wonderful presentation. Do you think the dead have a right to be digitally forgotten? And do you foresee do not bot me provisions in the person's will becoming common? So the right to say, don't do this.
Yeah, I think absolutely yes. I think that the right to be remembered should be equally respected as the right to be forgotten, and we should find a way to do it in a responsible way, and ideally would be to explicitly to get that information from the person, whether he or she would like to be created in a form of postmortem avatar or not. Yeah, so absolutely, I feel that we need to work towards building a whole new understanding of what doesn't mean to be forgotten in the digital afterlife industry, and people should have right to be forgotten.
The gentleman over, oh, sorry, yes, you there with the nice tie.
Sorry, it's more of a comment, really. I happen to, you may guess, work in the funeral sector. And it's the concept I hadn't really personally thought about much before, but to me it's slightly concerning as we deal with bereaved people on a regular basis. And from what you've talked about, it's highlighted it is really important that if it does go forward, which it will do, but it does become regulated because, for example, there's someone who would absolutely love this thing, you know, to remember, to immortalize their loved one so they can talk to them every day. That would mean the absolute world to them, but it would be very detrimental on their mental health. And because they can't let go and they won't let go, and they don't see any problem in that, but you know, all their relatives and everything could have quite an issue with that because you just see it decline, really. So
yeah, absolutely agree. And the thing is that we don't have a research-based evidence, as I said, that could help us answer to this question: how these technologies influence people who are grieving. And it's a very, very sensitive and delicate matter. So that's why I think we should take this precautious and try to react in advance, because I think we can all agree that we see that risk associated with this technology. So that's why this paper with Dr. Tomasz Holanek, with recommendations, with some sorts of ideas that could be implemented to make this area more safer.
Great insight there, and from an expert.
Yeah.
The gentleman here in the blue shirt.
Thank you for this excellent presentation. I really enjoyed it. My name is Talef. I have a PhD in media sociology from Jesus College, and I love sci-fi. So I wonder if any of the sci-fi books and films that cover this topic has shaped your work in any way, and whether the frameworks that you work on shaping now can also inform like future hypothetical scenarios, as we see in, for example, Richard Morgan's Altered Carbon, and so on. Could you comment on that, please?
Ah, that's interesting. Very. I think at the moment nothing immediately comes to my mind. But when I started my PhD, like one of the oft-repeated cultural reference to this topic was Black Mirror and Be Right Back. This episode. And at that time, we felt that, whoa, it's a long way to go before we get there. And after a few years, we have the whole digital afterlife industry, which is focused on producing this type of products or services. So I think that that the science fiction and the real world these two are very, very close and inform each other. Yeah.
Question up the back, please.
Hi, your talk was so moving. Thank you very much. I'm an academic studying memory. And in the psychology of memory, there's a well-known phenomena where partners who've been together for a long time divvy up the memory labor, so that, say, most commonly, she remembers the birthdays and he remembers how to access the bank account and so on. So your talk didn't really touch on the practical element of having this digital avatar. And I was wondering whether there's any conversations had about having an avatar that can simply support the other the living relatives in carrying out those tasks where they used to rely on somebody.
That's a very interesting point. I've never thought about it before, but it's a very practical thing. Yeah, and it sounds like a very good idea for AI recreation service providers. So we need to think twice before we sell it, but yeah. But it sounds, yeah, very, very, very creative.
Yes, we have two more questions here in the room. The lady with the diamond shirt here. Sorry, to halfway down here, just in front of you.
Thank you. I'm not an academic and I'm not writing a PhD, but it strikes me that, coming back to the first question, this issue of autonomy and ownership of the avatar, if it, in some ways, it can't belong to the person who's dead, they have lost their autonomy. But I can see that I'm one of four. My recollection of my parents is likely to be different to that of my siblings. How many avatars are we going to have if they're responding to individuals' memories, needs? And it also struck me that, having read Clara and the Sun, where there is a recreation of a child who's going to die as a robotic figure, how far are we going to go from avatars to something more tangible if we allow this to proliferate?
Yeah, that's a brilliant point, because obviously we are very different people. We are very different person to very different people. And like the avatar of me for my husband or my parents, that would mean something entirely different. So I have no idea how the AI recreations providers would like to respond to this, to this challenge. And also there is a very important question on the age. Like if we want to recreate a person who, for example, died at 60, do we want him or her recreated in a post-mortem avatar as 60 years old, or do we want him or her to be younger? And what does it mean for the whole for this situation, for the way we remember? So there are many questions to answer.
Thank you. Sorry, there was a thumbs up there for the younger version. The young lady right beside you there, please. No, not.
Thank you so much for your wonderful talk. I found a lot of resonance between what you said and theories of the archive and how to work with fragments of the past and animate them and humanize them. And I was wondering, where do you see the digital afterlife industry intersecting with maybe archives or other forms of institutional and public memory, maybe with like oral history projects or for memorializing collective deaths, like victims of war or genocide or things like that?
Yeah, so I would love to see much more stakeholders entering digital afterlife industry, because at the moment this this whole area is ruled by commercial companies, and the main value is profit. And I think that we can benefit a lot from inviting other stakeholders like universities, galleries, and many other different stakeholders who can provide very different values to this, sentimental, historical, and others. And I think we can only benefit from having this diversity and collaboration between very different groups and professionals, actually.
Going to go up to the back of the room for the next question, and maybe take one or two others before we close. Thank you.
Hi. Firstly, really liked your presentation, and I can't even imagine how tough the journey must have been to be punctuated by so many losses, but really well done, and thank you for everything you shared with us. I have a larger question, not particularly on afterlife, but AI and ethics. I come from an engineering background, and I've seen a very different classroom environment in tech. I'm now here doing public policy, and the social sciences environment is very different. It's like being on two extreme ends of the spectrum. But if we really want AI to be ethical, we really need the synthesis of the two. And unfortunately, that intersection of technology, policy, and society is not happening at the scale at which we can get commercial elements to sort of take notice and cognizance of the responsibility that comes with AI spread and how technology is permeating into our lives. So because you have been talking so much about how the commercial element is sort of dominating this landscape right now, do you have any ideas, or just curious to know what your perception was as to how can we bring in more responsibility as AI is scaling further and further?
Yes, I think that very important is to provide new ethical standards and maybe support designers who are working in this field. But very important is also our policy and regulations. And that's a very neglected field at the moment. And I know I have brilliant colleagues working in this field with legal backgrounds, Edina Harbinia, or yeah, I know many more of them, who work in this field to show us in which direction we could actually go. And one concept is, for example, posthumous privacy. So the whole question about whether a deceased person has the right to privacy and how it should be, how we should respect this in the digital world. So if we have access to data, can we do everything we want? And who should decide, who should be in charge? The family, if that's okay, that the husband or wife decides, or should we create a legal framework that will, so absolutely.
Okay, I'll come back for the last question if you wish to take it. Yeah.
Thank you again. So I am thinking of this kind of technology in terms of the ever-existing conflict between, say, fate and free will and technology and religion. I'm thinking of, for example, the advent of medical science, how in the early days of medicine, even that was seen as some kind of interference with God's design. So I'm just thinking if this kind of technology would find that kind of acceptance in society in terms of that conflict between technology and religion, and any thoughts on that will be really appreciated. Yeah.
I think that it's a question of how we define these technologies. If we think about them as simply tools, I think there is no conflict, and we can practice our religion, and we can be a religious person in one way or another, and we can use post-mortem avatars. But I can imagine also that for some people, like the gap or like the conflict between these two things is so immense and so profound that would prevent this person from using these technologies, because it's,
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say we do actually run many events around responsible AI. Here at the Intellectual Forum, and recently we had a fellow, through our Fellows Conference Fund, funded a wonderful social AI workshop, and there were a number of social scientists there and policymakers from criminal justice, health, different sectors. Those conversations are happening. Of course, you're operating in a field with huge power imbalances and some of the silos that you mentioned in terms of disciplines, but also, frankly, money and corporate, and the themes that the talk tonight, I think, has eloquently addressed. I want to thank you all for coming, but I really want to thank Kasia for an absolutely outstanding lecture. Thank you.